What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, June 12th, 2017 here. And hang on a second. I got a loose wire. There we are. Monday, June 12th, 2017. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And, of course, it's also King Kamehameha Day here in Hawaii. There's a little hang loose out there for our various fans and whatnot. And for those of you who wonder what all the fuss is about, it's a state holiday, not a federal holiday. King Kamehameha was the gentleman who united all of the Hawaiian islands into a single kingdom, except for Kauai, and that was brought in later through a royal marriage. But he isn't remembered for having simply gotten all the islands together, but because once he did, he turned out to be a very wise and just king, and he instituted what would be seen as the Hawaiian equivalent of certain civil liberties and legal protections against the often arbitrary commands of the Aiea that had preceded him. One that he's very famous for is called the Law of the Paddle, which gave ordinary Hawaiians a right to self-defense against Aiea who were abusing them, and it actually arose out of an occurrence that happened during one of the many battles where King Kamehameha was basically unifying the islands, and it had to do where they were making war on this other war chief, and one of the soldiers took a canoe paddle and literally broke it over the back of King Kamehameha. And after the other side lost the battle, in an effort to appease Kamehameha, they brought him the man who broke the paddle across his back, and Kamehameha said, I would have done exactly the same thing that this man did, and he just let him go. And later on, he sort of coded that. It was called the Law of the Paddle. You have a right to self-defense. So that's the reason he's remembered, and they heap lays all over him and statues of him everywhere. So it's Kamehameha Day. Now then, Thursday, we're going to have Paul Topete from the band Poker Face on our show talking about this year's Freedom Palooza, which is July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And we're going to be talking about that. A lot of music, a lot of people talking about current events, conspiracies, so forth and so on. Thursday, June 20th, Dr. Renee Dufault is going to be talking about her struggle against the FDA over the issue of mercury in high fructose corn syrup. And, of course, Friday, as always, the lovely Lady Claire will be here. Now then, Attorney General Sessions will testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee basically about the Comey testimony, and everybody's now ramping up for that, and the left is still hoping, oh, there's going to be something, Sessions will say something, we can go after Trump. Talk about flogging a dead horse. And it is amazing to see how they just absolutely refuse to give up on any of this nonsense. They're still out there dreaming that they can get Trump out and somehow get Hillary in. And at this point, I'm seeing this degree of discord as a threat not just to the GOP and the Republicans or even to the Democrats, but to the nation as a whole, especially as we head into this war agenda. You have to have a unified government. A government that is at war with itself cannot win a war in another country, and that is just the reality there. And it's time to put all this nonsense behind us and move on forward. Now, congressional investigators are looking into the admission that James Comey did leak information to this Columbia professor who then passed it on to the New York Times. And now they're asking the obvious question, what other leaks were there? And they're asking for Comey to turn over all of his memos, which is not really that significant because there's no way to tell if a memo accurately reports what was said or even when it was actually written. Comey could be in his basement right now writing up a bunch of memos. So I don't know what's going on about that, but amazingly enough, even Dianne Feinstein is getting into this. I'm thinking Feinstein may have realized that if this goes along any further, it is going to damage the Democratic Party, which is damaging her. Now, of course, Comey's defenders are out there saying, well, there wasn't any classified information in the memo, and everybody talks about their job, so it's really no big deal. Well, not exactly, because when you go to work for the FBI, or for that matter, most companies, you're going to sign an agreement, your employment agreement, and usually there is a confidentiality clause in there. If you go to work for a pizza parlor, there's going to be a note in there that you don't discuss the secret recipe for the sauce on the pizza with outside people who might be trying to go into competition. And certainly that's true of the FBI. You do not discuss internal operations with outsiders. And so it looks like Comey, at the very least, has violated his FBI agreement by handing off that memo to a friend. And that could actually be a legal matter for him, plus the fact that he had previously testified under oath that he never leaked anything. So now we've got him there. We've got him. And Trump is out there saying this could turn out to be a bigger deal than anybody realizes yet. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So the House Committee wants to see all the memos here. Meanwhile, out in the real world, people are starting to take surveys in the wake of Comey's testimony, and what they're finding, not to anybody's surprise, support for Donald Trump is strong and solid, and everybody is very disappointed in Comey. They do not think that he was behaving very well during this Russiagate investigation, and certainly not for the way he was very obviously trying to protect Hillary Clinton. So the American people understand what is really going on. Another article that came out of Investment Watch blog is basically saying that everybody inside the Beltway knew that President Trump was not under any FBI investigation. And so they're trying to back off from that one. Now, as you know, there has now been yet another breach, this one of the FBI, and again, it is one of those situations where it's a whistleblower who tried to go through the correct legal process to say there is a problem, and he was shut down. And there is this former U.S. intelligence contractor, and he's saying he has more than 600 million classified documents on 47 hard drives from the NSA and the CIA, a larger volume of information than Edward Snowden's files. And he's suing former FBI Director James Comey and other government leaders, alleging the Bureau covered up evidence he provided, showing widespread spying on Americans that violated their civil liberties. Another article, this is over in the Daily Mail. Trump won't promise not to fire Special Counsel Robert Mueller, says President's attorney. Now, this is very carefully worded. Trump's attorney isn't saying anything one way or the other than to remind everybody that the President does have the authority to fire the special counsel. Of course, if he does, it's going to turn up, they're going to equate it to Nixon's firing of his special prosecutor. Now, you need to remember, Mueller only has the job because of Comey's leak to the New York Slime's forced Sessions to recuse himself from an investigation which is now known to be based on non-existent evidence. In other words, rumor and hearsay. The special counsel in this case should be shut down, but it would be far better if Congress did it rather than Trump. And in any event, given Comey and Mueller's past close association, there is clearly a conflict of interest at work here. Comey used to work for Mueller, back when Mueller was head of the FBI. So the whole thing just stinks to high heaven. And the corporate media, having learned absolutely nothing from Saddam's nuclear weapons and Assad's sarin gas and so forth and so on, they're still out there literally blatantly lying. And over at Reuters, they're fanning up another disgruntled individual who was fired by Donald Trump. And this is former U.S. Attorney Bahara, who's now out there saying, well, he got unusual phone calls from Trump that made him uncomfortable and caused him to question. Again, rumor, hearsay, innuendo. If Trump had done anything actionable on those phone calls, then U.S. Attorney Bahara was obligated to immediately make a report, and apparently he didn't. But here is what's really interesting. This is a direct quote from the Reuters article. Bahara's comments come just a few days after former Federal Bureau of Investigation Director James Comey testified at a congressional panel that Trump had asked him to drop an investigation into former Trump aide Michael Flynn and his alleged ties to Russia. That is an out-and-out falsehood. And Reuters is obviously hoping that whoever is reading this didn't actually watch the hearings, because it was put to Comey, did anybody ask you to stop or alter these investigations? And he said no. There was no order given. There was no obstruction of justice. And Reuters is just out there trying to sell the idea that, oh yes, Trump asked him to drop the investigation. It's a flat-out lie. And now they found another disgruntled former employee of the U.S. government who's been fired by Trump, giving vent to his bitterness. And Reuters is running with it as if it's, again, the smoking gun proof that Trump must go. If at first you don't succeed, lie again. Seems to be what's going on. Did you see that video where that CNN reporter came on out and literally cried that he was seated in the back row at the Trump press conference? And Trump doesn't like us. Well, you lied about him all last year. You're lying about him today. Frankly, the corporate media is lucky to get a seat at all. And this idea that they own that front row is absolutely ridiculous. It was never graven in stone. Now, again, something's going on over with Dianne Feinstein, because now she is calling for an investigation into whether Loretta Lynch gave Hillary Clinton cover during the election by asking James Comey to drop the status of the investigation into Hillary's email server down to a mere matter, to lower its priority. And don't forget that bizarre press conference Comey gave where he went down the list of felony Title 18 violations committed by Hillary Clinton and then said the FBI does not recommend charges, which, by the way, the FBI is not authorized to make that decision. They present the evidence of the crime to the Justice Department, and the Attorney General makes that determination. So, now then, somebody's crunched all the numbers, and as it turns out, the Clinton Foundation made $2.85 billion off of that Uranium One deal, as Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, was facilitating the selling of 1/5 of America's uranium ore to a Russian company. Money was pouring into the Clinton Foundation. Grand total, $2.85 billion. Nobody seems to want to talk about that. That's clearly evidence of Russian collusion. But it's okay for the liberal Democrats to do that. You know, it's only when Trump is accused of it that we're going to make a big deal out of it. Now, getting on back over to Seth Rich, the Ron Paul Institute has come out with a very cogent observation. Why is it being declared a conspiracy theory to think that Seth Rich leaked the DNC emails to WikiLeaks, but it's not considered a conspiracy theory to think the emails were hacked by Russia? Because it's propaganda. The term conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist was literally created by the CIA as a PR device in the wake of the assassination of John F. Kennedy to dismiss those who questioned the official Warren report without having to answer the questions that they raised, like the problems with the magic bullet theory, the problem with witnesses who said gunfire came from other directions in Dealey Plaza. And, of course, these days, looking back, we understand the Warren report was a cover-up. It was a whitewash. Even Congress, during the House Select Committee hearing on assassinations, came to the conclusion there were more than one shooter in Dealey Plaza. Hence, by definition, it was a conspiracy to assassinate the president. Now, let's go on over to Great Britain, because everybody is looking at the results of this election, where Theresa May was absolutely convinced it was going to solidify her position and instead was handed a stunning defeat. Her party is now a minority. She's struggling to build a coalition that will be willing to elect her to continue as prime minister. And she's facing a serious challenge from Jeremy Corbyn, who's out there talking to all the other parties and saying, look at the policies. Whose policy do you want? But somebody made a very interesting observation. This came out of Veterans Today, and basically said that for the second year in a row, Britain held a critically important election in June, and for a second year in a row, those elections were preceded by one or more false flags designed to terrorize voters and stampede them into the establishment camp. And for the second year in a row, that tactic failed. And they're asking a question. have false flags become a recognized political tool by the general population, where they understand false flags are a tool of statecraft, and they're not going to work any longer. And I think that would be a wonderful thing if that has happened. Score a victory for the independent media and the Internet, that the public is now better educated. They understand the dirty tricks politicians will play to secure election. So Theresa May is appealing to members of Parliament. She's trying to build a coalition who's going to vote her back into being Prime Minister. Corbyn is mounting a challenge. He told the Sunday Mirror, this is still on. And he says if they go on policies rather than personality, that he thinks he could actually be the next Prime Minister of Great Britain. Now, over at Gallup, they have run another survey of the American people. And to nobody's surprise, it is showing a stunning decline in Americans' respect for the United States government. And Gallup's latest poll is showing that only 28% of Americans have a favorable opinion of the federal government. In fact, that's a lower unfavorability rating than for any business or industry sector. They actually put them out on a graph, various different things, airlines, medicine, so forth and so on, and showed the numbers. And at the very bottom of the graph, with the worst numbers, the U.S. government. And I expect that much of that 28% that have a favorable opinion of the federal government are either working for the federal government or they're getting free stuff from it. When you subtract out that factor, I think respect and support for the U.S. government is going to be much, much lower than that. Now, over in France, apparently less than half of all registered voters cast a ballot yesterday. And this is an unprecedented low turnout in France's post-war Fifth Republic. And basically saying that Macron is expected to win, but he's not going to go into Parliament with an obvious popular mandate with that low a turnout. Apparently over in Paris, somebody threw a Molotov cocktail into a restaurant, 12 injured, including 6 police. And because of the ongoing terror attacks, Macron is already saying that if he does win the second round election, he is going to make permanent France's current state of emergency. In other words, all the restrictions on civil liberties, all the restrictions on privacy will become permanently coded into French law, repeating exactly what Adolf Hitler did with his enabling acts that were supposed to be a temporary response to an emergency, and instead they became the foundation of the Nazi dictatorship. And Macron is getting ready to do the same thing over there in France. Now, let's see. Oh, hello? I heard a noise. Let's take.
Hey, Mike.
We're going to take a phone call. Brandon in San Francisco. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I just wanted to reference Dr. Jerome Corsi and his advice to Trump for starting a fireside chat to speak directly to the people and remove the filter, the noise from the MSN. We know they're just running bait and switch, distractions, etc. And it's odd that Trump hasn't taken this up, because the Twitter thing, I don't really follow Twitter, but it is an effective tool. But he needs to do a fireside chat, a weekly chat, and I think he needs to talk to his detractors, not to his supporters, and, you know, just reference things that the truth. For example, he could even have a reading list of books for people, like, for example, Edward Bernays' propaganda book, or Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Brandon, we're going to have to take a break for commercials. Do not hang up. I'm going to come back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Brandon in San Francisco. And the term, the fireside chat, actually began with Franklin Roosevelt. And it was the name given to a series of 30 radio broadcasts that he did as president. And it did allow him to get his message out directly to the people. in a way that could not be edited or altered by vested interests within the corporate media. More important than that, it gave Americans a sense of being much closer to the president. And that was a very, very powerful tool. In fact, Hitler was using exactly the same thing in Germany. He was very big on direct radio broadcasts to the German people, and it galvanized the population in support of him. I think it would be a very good thing for Trump to be doing, and sort of branch out from Twitter, because not everybody is on Twitter. And maybe they could do it on C-SPAN or who knows. But I agree with you. I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah, it's clear that they take anything he says and twist it or even edit it so deceptively. He's a well-spoken guy. He's a common man. I do believe that. And just, I mean, we have the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, Edward Bernays' book on propaganda. Even All Wars Are Bankers' Wars. I mean, for the, you know, he could even carry around the Constitution and recommend that everyone reads it. The power that he has, I don't even know if he grasps it, but he's constantly taking hits, and the government is not doing the work for the people. At some point, we're going to have to throw these guys overboard and start over, because they are not doing our work. They're focused on destroying him. First, they're going to destroy his character, and then I wouldn't put it past them to destroy the man like they did with Kennedy. At some point, he's got to take the bull by the horns. I mean, this guy, I believe in Trump, and I believe in this country, and it's getting the frustration is palpable.
Yeah, it is. But, and again, going back to that Reuters article this morning, what they reported that happened in the Comey hearings was exactly the opposite of what was actually said. And at this point, the corporate media just, it is nonsense. It is.
They're proven.
Yeah, I can't imagine that anybody is really still listening or watching there anymore. Probably only because, you know, they've got the live camera feeds and so forth.
They're proven liars. We can prove their lies over and over again. It doesn't matter. I think that there's the real cognitive dissonance that's occurring. I still talk to people on the left, and they are drinking the Kool-Aid. I mean, it's like a Jim Jones factory here. And unless we can reach those fools, those lefties, we're going to continue the struggle. And that's the key, is like, if it came out of Trump's mouth and said, hey, you know, Schumer is a psychopath, he's lying, you know, the FBI is not on our side, whatever it takes, we have to push back and change the narrative. And he has the power. I don't understand why he's not using it. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, well, again, you know, politics is perception, and I would like to see Hillary convicted on just one crime. But if she is, the left, the liberals, her supporters are all going to say, oh, it's payback for the election, it's this, it's that. And unfortunately, Hillary has pulled together the liberal movement as a personality cult around here. And I notice that your reference to Jim Jones, it's very apt. It is very apt. They worship her as a figurehead, and people who are like that, they're not interested in facts, they're not interested in logic, they just want to believe, and they want to be caught up in that firestorm of belief and righteousness. And it's a very, very dangerous situation here right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to see something happen where all of Hillary's supporters would all of a sudden wake up and say, oh, wow, I guess she really wasn't the person we thought that she was, that she really was this very crazy, power-mad lady who killed a lot of people over the years. Anyway, Brandon,
showing your true colors. Thanks, Mike.
Brandon, got to let you go. We get to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go to Alice on the Big Island. Aloha, Alice. Happy Kamehameha Day. What's on your mind today?
Hi, I was just wondering if you were aware of these headlines that the feds have arrested dozens of Russian mobsters whose crimes involve Atlantic City casinos.
I actually have not come across that yet, but I'll do a search for it on the next commercial break.
Okay, it's on the Palmer Report, and also Salon has it.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. Another story that just came across right now is apparently over in Indiana, they arrested 12 Democrats for vote fraud. So a lot of arrests going on all over the place. And once again, the detectable vote fraud that happened last year was all favoring Hillary Clinton, not Donald Trump. Okay?
Okay, I would like to see your report be a little bit more open-minded into the possibility that Trump actually might have some conspiracies going on, rather than to just dismiss it 100%. Okay, thank you.
Well, I do try and keep an open mind. Thank you very much for the phone call. But again, I want to see some actual provable facts for any of these allegations, and they keep coming up short. And so based on prior history, you know, after a while you start saying, why are we even paying attention to this nonsense anymore? All right, we're going to go to Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha, Tony. Congratulations on your statehood referendum. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike, and aloha. Listen, Mike, I tried to call you on Friday, the third hour, but you weren't accepting any phone calls. I want to make my comment really quick. During the Vietnam War, you mentioned that the money junkies purposely prolonged that war because, you know, for the dollar, right? My question is a hypothetical one. Did LBJ and or Nixon own military stocks?
Well, technically, the way it's supposed to work, when you become president, your personal wealth gets put into a blind trust. In other words, you take all your assets and you prepare a trust declaration and you give them the trustee, and the trustee will reinvest the wealth someplace else so that a president doesn't know where his money is. That's the way it's supposed to work. Now, we know that when Bill Clinton was president, the trust declarations were fraudulent, and the Clintons still had control of a great deal of their wealth that they were able to invest based on inside information they had from within the White House. In fact, I think it was his refusal to sign the fraudulent trust declarations that was the motive for the murder of White House Deputy Counsel Vincent Foster. But in theory, assuming that Nixon and LBJ were playing by the rules, their own personal wealth, they didn't know where it was. That being said, some of their supporters and backers were definitely heavily invested into the military-industrial complex, and certainly the way the Vietnam War was being conducted, it did seem to be more about grinding up munitions and charging the American people for them than actually gaining ground in that jungle.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Mike in Alaska. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Mike. I wanted to echo what Brandon was saying earlier regarding Comey and the testimony. The liberals really are, they're not changing. You know, what looks to us to be, you know, a bombshell, to them, you know, there's always a way to twist it. And I've talked to some people, and it hasn't changed their point of view at all. But we have to stop chasing their news cycle. We're always saying, well, this proves our point on this and this, and all these other issues that we need, you know, the wall, talking about immigration, talking about, you know, Seth Rich, all that goes to the wayside when we follow them into this Alice, you know, down the rabbit hole here. It's getting ridiculous. But I wanted to ask you if you saw this thing from Austin, these videos online of this communist protest. Again, there was a march against Sharia, and then all these Antifa people showed up, and they were beating up the cops, and the cops wouldn't fight back, and it was absolute chaos.
Yeah, I saw a lot of it. And again, this Antifa looks like another one of these sponsored groups trying to create unrest in the streets of America. But if somebody was thinking that they were going to get a color revolution going in the United States, at this point, it definitely looks like it's not working. They're not gaining traction. They don't have the support of the vast majority of the American people.
Mike, one thing about Antifa, like yourself, I lived in Germany, and when I was there, they would spray paint it was always leftist. It was always very, very far left stuff. And living there, I'd see it like under, if I'm riding my bicycle under a bridge, I'd see all this stuff, and they would really agitate. And I'd go, wow, this is, when you get somewhere new and you see something you've never seen before, you're like, well, this is, I wonder what kind of household these people grew up in. It's just really, they're losers. And so I saw it and I went, okay, note to self. I hope we never have any of that, where I'm from, right?
Yes.
And, 10 years later, it's like this group is pretty well known in Europe, actually, from Sweden down to Germany. They've been doing this for quite some time. And I don't know if this is true, but I heard yesterday that this group was started by Trotsky in the 1920s. And they were doing like all this street battling with Hitler and also all the other political parties. And they would be the most radical group that would prime a country for the Communist Party to come in and say, listen, things are getting out of control. We can deal with these people. Vote for us. We'll calm them down, and then we will bring in something socialistic, something communistic.
Well, that's hardly unique to the communists. I mean, Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing with his brown shirts. Most people didn't realize that much of the terrorism that drove Hitler to, first of all, winning the chancellorship and then getting his enabling acts was being done by his own henchmen. So I don't think that kind of false flag terrorism is confined to any one group, any one particular philosophy. Again, if you look at that story we talked about earlier, we've had 2 British elections that were preceded by terror attacks that were intended to terrorize the voters into sticking with the establishment. And in both cases, it failed. So people are wising up to this stuff. People are beginning to understand that most terrorist activity is false flag, that it's bought and paid for by somebody who's trying to push an agenda.
Absolutely. And one last thing is we all have to take this to our conversational level. One thing people do, they'll say, well, I listen to what happened and I'm in the know and I'm not part of the problem. But, we need to get this knowledge and we need to, it's like thousands of small skirmishes, even in daily conversation where someone says, oh, we need to let these people in. And this happened to me this morning. I said, well, what job will they do? Or did you know that there's not much for them to do once they get to Germany? And the person kind of stopped and went, I never thought about that. We all need to do that daily.
Yes.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, you're welcome. And you need to look at the escalating crime, the rape crisis, and you need to look about all the violence that is coming in. And again, the migration is a filtering process. You're not getting the best of the people from that source country. You're getting the ones who couldn't make it in their home country. You're getting criminals fleeing prosecution. You're getting people who may have very serious diseases and hope to avail themselves of free medical care in the destination country. And in the process, they're contagious. They're infecting other people. So you need to present all aspects of it and not just get caught up in this liberal idea that everybody has a right to go anywhere they want on planet Earth. And, every time I hear that, the first thing I say is, okay, do you have a right to just walk into the White House without permission? And they go, well, no, that's got to be different. Okay, well, don't we all have a right to some security and protection? All right, we're going to take one more phone call, then we're going to close the phone lines for a while. Sherry in Fredericksburg, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to say real quick first that the vetting is background, but it's also suitability. You have to look at 2 things, the suitability, where you're going to put them, and also the background, because there's such great differences here. But anyway, 2 things, one about the corporate media, this, and another real quick thing about Hillary. This weekend produced another really absolutely ridiculous remark from the corporate media in response to the questioning of Comey. It was on Sunday morning, and it was part of a roundtable discussion, and one of the participants thought that Comey would be better described as a whistleblower. Well, this suggests I know that whistleblowing that a whistleblower can write down a personal observation and call it credible documentation, and that Comey was just trying to do something good for the nation. You know, anyone who's seen the movie Erin Brockovich, which was a true story, can see how credible documentation or information is obtained, and how necessary it is to come forward with the help of an attorney, as she did, or by any means that can serve as protection. Because, you know, she got the harassing calls and we're out to get you, and your life is in danger and you better watch out for your kids. She got those calls too. So it's getting the information. You really have to get out on a limb and take a risk with your life, and you have to do it under this umbrella of protection somewhere. It is so deceitful what they're doing, giving some of the thing I mentioned last time I called about his friend trying to suggest it was his friend's idea to go to press. This exemplifies to me the corporate media's. It exemplifies how they are. This is synonymous with their methods, and I think they're doing themselves all the damage, more damage than we could ever do. You know,
we've never been out to damage the corporate media. They're doing an excellent job of it themselves. First of all, Comey was wrong to give this information to that professor at Columbia because of his own FBI agreement. And if he was trying to blow the whistle, what he needed to provide was some actual evidence of wrongdoing. A handwritten memo would not be accepted as evidence in a court of law, because you've got no way of knowing that what is written on the memo actually reflects reality. It's not a photograph. It's not a video recording. It is not a sworn-to document with signatures on it. There's no provenance whatsoever. It's just one man's opinion. Second, there's no way to know when the memo was actually written. It could be dated January, and he may have written it last week. And so this idea of trying to proceed forward against Donald Trump on the basis of Comey's handwritten memos, when there's absolutely no process to guarantee their accuracy or honesty, or even that they were contemporaneous with the events they described. Comey could be down in his basement writing these things right now, and there's no way to tell. And that's why the story is just really ridiculous. And now they're trying to fan up this other guy, this fired U.S. attorney, and say, oh, well, Trump said things to him that made him uncomfortable. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had conversations with your boss and come away from it 100% comfortable? I would say probably from time to time you've talked to your boss and you were made uncomfortable because the boss was saying, this is how I want things to be done. Because, after all, he's the boss. And most of us have a tendency to sort of tighten up and cringe when the boss is coming around. So this idea that Trump's conversation made him uncomfortable, it's a non-starter. It's a non-issue. When you have actual evidence that Donald Trump broke the law, then you can do something about it. Until then, close your yap, because you're just out there whining and crying and getting attention for yourself. And it really is. I'm rather stunned that the anti-Trumpers are still trying to raise on this busted flush.
Well, I think a lot of them really were hoping for a free ride in America and housing and jobs and all this stuff. And they were lining up things up to be. We were in the corporate state was lining things up to be like it was in Russia with. Communism. You know, you have your building, you live in here, and here's where you work, and your little car will take you to work. All you have to do is just turn it on, and it'll drive you where you're supposed to go. And but that's a nightmare. Let me point out one thing about Hillary. The initial questioning of Hillary, I don't know if this was pointed out before, but one reason is very obviously called a matter, very possibly anyway, so she needn't be put under oath. We don't want that to happen again. The next time this comes up with Weiner or whoever it's going to come up with, I hope she will be put under oath this time.
Yeah, that was one of the things that a lot of people were very concerned about, was the fact that she wasn't put under oath. They didn't search her house. They just said, tell us your story, and she told them her story, and that was the end of it.
Why would she need to do any more than that if it's just a matter? you know?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, again, we need to investigate Loretta Lynch. I mean, here is the hard verifiable fact. Hillary Clinton committed felony violations of Title 18. Comey admitted to that publicly. We've all seen the evidence ourselves. Why wasn't she prosecuted? And you need to find out, where did that originate from? Now remember, Attorney General Loretta Lynch is technically the superior of the FBI's Director Comey. So she was his boss. If it came from her, she's the one that needs to be investigated and punished for it.
And you wonder, too, if there's collusion between her and Comey and the media people and all this. You kind of wonder what collusion behind the scenes is going on, because it's almost like it's orchestrated. They're going to say this, and then this one's going to respond this way, and this one can respond that way, and we'll cover it here and there. And I don't know. It's
well, remember all those media executives who were hanging out at John Podesta's place during the elections last year? Of course it was all being coordinated.
Yeah.
The corporate media was acting as Hillary Clinton's propaganda arm. There was never any question about that. So yes, there's obviously collusion was taking place, and the corporate media abandoned its obligation to be impartial.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me say all that.
All right. Well, you're welcome. All right. We're going to let you go here. Thank you. We're going to close the phone lines for a while here, because we have got a bunch of stuff that we need to get to in the next couple of hours. Mostly when we come back from this next commercial break, we're going to get into Qatar, because that whole situation may be starting to unravel. And we'll have more of that after these few words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, as you know, over the last week, we have seen this incredible situation take off around Qatar. It began with Donald Trump basically implying that Qatar is supporting and funding terrorism, which is an accusation the U.S. government hurls at any country they're getting ready to attack or regime change. And so there was this effort to isolate Qatar economically, physically, but it seems to be kind of unraveling because Saudi Arabia basically broke diplomatic relations with Qatar and imposed a land and air blockade and was trying to bring Qatar to heel. Instead, Qatar saw a lot of other countries coming to their aid and support, such as Turkey and Iran, and they're moving closer to Russia. So this has been a foreign policy whoopsie, because instead of Qatar being brought into the Western sphere of influence, they are pivoting away toward Russia and Russia's allies. Now, one of the accusations that the U.S. government hurled against Qatar was that they were allowing the Taliban to operate on their soil. And Mutlaq al-Qahtani, a senior counterterrorism advisor to Qatar's foreign minister, told Al Jazeera that Qatar hosted the Taliban, quote, by request of the U.S. government, end quote, and as part of Qatar's open-door policy to facilitate talks, to mediate, and to bring peace. Now, the Taliban did open a political office in Qatar in 2013. The Qatari government later shut it down. There may still be some Taliban in Qatar, but this is a revelation that the Taliban got into Qatar supposedly at the request of the U.S. government. And we know how the U.S. government are using these supposed terror groups as instruments of their policy in the Middle East. Remember when it came on out that ISIS and Al-Qaeda, these horrible terrorists, were actually being trained and supported covertly by the U.S. government in Syria. Now, Kuwait is trying to act as the mediator in all of this and saying Qatar is ready for talks to try and resolve these issues. Bahrain is moving to freeze Qatari assets within their sphere of influence. So it's still a very, very tense situation over there. But I note that Saudi Arabia has not yet launched a military conquest of Qatar. Meanwhile, Qatar is paying John Ashcroft's law firm $2.5 million to defend against the terrorism accusations. And remember, Ashcroft was U.S. Attorney General under President George W. Bush. And so it gets kind of murky there at the higher levels of government. Who is on whose side and which way is playing, and is another illustration of that. Saudi Arabia is now switching their view on the Kurds. They're becoming pro-Kurdish after Turkey sides with Qatar. So it's just all spinning crazily over there. Everybody's flip-flopping, changing sides. We'll be back after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. We're going to keep the phone lines closed for a little bit longer while I catch up on the news here. We're talking about events in Qatar and this all of a sudden, out of nowhere, attempt to isolate Qatar, bankrupt it, bring it to its heels, and it appears to be faltering because other countries like Turkey, Iran, and Russia are showing support and aid for Qatar. They're flying in humanitarian aid. And as it turns on out, at least from the United States side, the anti-Qatar movement appears to be a bought and paid for operation, as has become typical of the United States government, because U.S. legislation threatening to sanction Qatar for its support of Palestinian terror was sponsored by 10 legislators who received more than $1 million over the last 18 months from lobbyists and groups linked to Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, the bill was introduced to the U.S. House of Representatives on May 25th, but the text wasn't available until Friday morning, hours after Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Egypt put 59 people and 12 institutions linked to Qatar on a terror list. So this is pure politics. Now, a senior political analyst based in Australia is saying that given the rash of recent threats by Saudi Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman against Iran, he has come to the conclusion that the recent terrorist attacks in Tehran were probably ordered by this Wahhabi prince. I'm not sure I agree with that. If you look at the targeting, they hit the Iranian parliament, which is an icon of the 1979 Iranian Revolution, when they kicked out their U.S. puppet ruler, the Shah, and established a real democracy there. The other target, of course, was the tomb of Ayatollah Khomeini, who was seen as the father of the 1979 revolution that broke Iran free from foreign puppet rule. Now, as the situation continues to unfold around Qatar, Iran is dispatching warships to Oman. And they're basically departing to Oman, and then will go to the north of the Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Aden. This is the 47th flotilla, comprised of 1 destroyer and 1 logistics warship. So there we are. And they're also now airlifting food into Qatar as well. It would be very reckless and foolish for Saudi Arabia to try and shoot down humanitarian aid flights. They could still do it, but meanwhile, Iran is claiming they have proof of direct U.S. support for ISIS. And what makes the timing interesting is last Thursday, Congressman Dana Rohrabaugh praised ISIS for coordinated terrorist attacks in Tehran, which left 17 civilians dead, then suggested the United States should support ISIS in their endeavors to bring regime change to Iran. Gee, I thought ISIS were these villains that cut off people's heads and all, and now all of a sudden we're buddy-buddy with them. We've been covertly supporting them, and now Dana Rohrabaugh says, yeah, we should support them. Doesn't that technically make the United States a state sponsor of terrorism? Now, getting on back to Syria, the battle is waging back and forth down there. The U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces has retaken a second district of Syria's troubled and militant-held northern city of Raqqa from the Takfiri Daesh terrorists and launched a renewed assault on a base north of the city. And apparently, with all this confusion going on in the Middle East, some of these rival groups in northern Syria are starting to turn on each other, which I'm sure Assad would see as welcome news. But apparently they've reached the point of trying to decide how they're going to carve up Syria when it's all over, and there are several disagreements going on. There is a report, still unconfirmed, that ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi has been killed in an airstrike. This was reported on Syrian state television yesterday. And supposedly it's claiming Baghdadi was killed in the terror group's stronghold in Raqqa. But this is not the first time he's been reported dead. He's been reported dead, I think, at least 3 times before, and he is risen like the ever-ready bunny. He keeps going and going and going and going. So we'll see what happens here. Now, everybody, of course, is out there screaming over the revelation that once again the U.S.-supported factions are using illegal chemical weapons in Syria and Iraq. We're talking about white phosphorus. It is a war crime under international treaties and domestic U.S. law to use it on residential areas because it's an incendiary. It'll burn the whole town down. If it lands on people, it will burn right to the bone. You can't put it out. You can't put water on it. It's horrible, horrible stuff. Under international law, the only thing it's allowed to be used for is generating white smoke as a camouflage, and the U.S. is now out there saying that they were dropping this white phosphorus on these residential areas to provide camouflage, for who they will not say. But don't forget, when Saddam used white phosphorus against the Kurds, the U.S. said, yes, it's a banned chemical weapon and a war crime. So once again, we have this idea that it's only bad when the other guy does it, but it's okay when the U.S. government does it. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Apparently over in Yemen, actually, this is a flashback story. Things are still out of control over in Yemen here. Now, the United Nations is now accusing the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia of covertly supplying munitions to one of Libya's rebel groups that is trying to basically kick out Libya's government. Now, remember how we got into this mess with Libya. There was a supposedly successful intervention a few years back where Libya's elected government was kicked on out and a U.S. puppet ruler put on in. The Libyan people didn't like that. They have tried to kick that puppet ruler out, and now there is an internationally recognized government that is basically supported by what are being called rebels. And apparently the UAE and Saudi Arabia are assisting the rebels with air power, which violates United Nations sanctions. Everybody's breaking the rules out there. Apparently, the Balkans are starting to heat on up, and unlike 1999, where the Balkans were put down after about 2 months of bombings, much of the Balkans are now protected by the latest generation of Russian missiles. So we could see the Balkans explode yet again, all over again. Oh, what a lovely war. Pyongyang has announced that there will soon be a test of their latest intercontinental ballistic missile. Now, obviously, this is exactly the kind of weapon that the U.S. is going to point to prove that North Korea is an absolute danger and threat to the rest of the world. Of course, when you point to all of the intercontinental ballistic missiles that the United States has, oh no, that's only a deterrent. That's to discourage other people from attacking us. Yeah, isn't North Korea entitled to the same deterrence? After all, the United States made war on them. Technically, there is still a state of war. There's a ceasefire in place, but technically the war is still on. So, now, down in the Philippines, yesterday, Reuters broke a story claiming that the United States has agreed to a Philippine request to assist Philippines in the war against ISIS. And as we reported on Friday, U.S. forces are in the Philippines right now. Now, this story by Reuters has been directly contradicted by Philippine President Duterte. Duterte claims he never approached the United States. He never asked them to come on in and intervene. He has not granted permission to the United States to be in the Philippines. This is a repeat of Syria. Oh, we're just going to go on into your country and start blowing things up because the evil ISIS are there. And once again, Reuters is exposed for putting out absolutely fake news. Now, this attitude of we have a right to go on into other countries to just do whatever we want seems to be spreading. It's contagious. Ted Cruz is now out there saying that it's time to send U.S. troops into Mexico to fight the Mexican drug cartels. Maybe that's how they're going to bring Mexico into the North American Union. Just conquer it. And if they do, Canada, you're next. Michael Moore may have been a little more than prescient with his movie Canadian Bacon, which, by the way, if you've never seen it, it's a great movie. It's a funny movie. Now, Israel has approved the largest West Bank settlement construction in 25 years, more than 8,000 new homes. A third of them are going to start construction immediately. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is calling on the dismantling of the UN agency that aids millions of Palestinian refugees, saying that the UN program is inciting anti-Israel sentiment. It's amazing. Now, as I mentioned to that caller from Puerto Rico, they had a non-binding referendum yesterday, and overwhelming vote for U.S. statehood, for Puerto Rico to be the 51st statehood. And I can already imagine the flag makers trying to figure out how they're going to get 51 stars on that to look halfway decently. Now, do you remember a while back we were talking about America's poor quality of weapons at war and how the F-22 has a problem with asphyxiating its own pilots? It turns out the F-35 has something similar. And over at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, they have halted all flights of the F-35 fighter jets. They halted them on Friday after numerous pilots complained of experiencing hypoxia-like symptoms, meaning they weren't getting oxygen. And they were getting dizzy. Now, fortunately, the pilots were able to use the aircraft's backup emergency oxygen system and land safely. But it's another reminder that America's weapons, they look good and they cost a lot of money, but there are problems. In fact, over the weekend, I was watching on one of the educational channels, and there was this puff piece out about the development of the new littoral combat ships, specifically the Freedom and the Independence class. And they were out there trying to make these things look like they're going to be really potent and really powerful, and the crews are working really hard to dial them on in. No mention of the hull corrosion problems on the Independence class. No mention of the drivetrain problems on the Freedom class. But they were up there showing how they're putting all these weapons out there for testing. And for a rah-rah piece, just looking at it, it was just all of these high-tech whiz-bang systems were just not working. Couldn't get to work, couldn't get to deploy. The fins on this underwater device kept malfunctioning. And I understand, you know, it's still in development, still in testing, but it looks like there are just huge amounts of problems that are going to interfere with an effective deployment of force. Now, when they were out there with the Freedom class ship, they were dialing in the 30-millimeter cannon, and they were going to have a simulated engagement where the littoral combat ship was running at speed, and its guns were firing at these drones, boat drones, that were supposed to represent Iranian attack boats. And the first thing I noticed is that all these Iranian attack boats were just cruising along in a straight line at a steady speed, and most of those 30-millimeter shells still missed them. And that's not real-world combat. Real boats are going to be running at top speed. They're going to be jinking and zigzagging all over the place. And if they come in from upwind, they can deploy smoke, which is going to make it a lot harder for the ship to see what's going on, because radar return is fuzzy. And again, it looked like a demonstration where it was set up to be successful, but not necessarily simulate what they're going to find out there in the real world. I'm thinking America's might is more myth than reality. And all it's going to take is one major loss of a carrier, something like that, and we're going to be in the same situation the former Soviet Union was following their defeat in Afghanistan, where the invincibility, the illusion of invincibility is destroyed. Okay, let's talk about the economy right now. As you know, on Friday, the market was sort of soaring on that Donald Trump is off the hook with Comey. Then there was a little bit of a hiccup late in the day, and the plunge protection team came back in, and they got the Dow back up to 80. The NASDAQ was a different story. It really took a bit of a clubbing on Friday, and apparently traders are now selling the NASDAQ short. In fact, traders are buying the most NASDAQ downside protection since the Lehman Brothers collapse. And it's kind of hard to figure out why. We're seeing more and more of the tech companies are reporting poor earnings, poor sales. So there may be something coming there. Everybody seems to feel that it's not going to hold together much longer. Now, Ellen Brown, who we had on the show recently, is out there saying, "Dear Mr. President, be careful what you wish for. Higher interest rates will kill the recovery. Personally, I'm not seeing a recovery." But she makes a valid point. Higher interest rates will triple the interest on the federal debt to $830 billion a year by 2026. It's going to hurt workers and young voters and could bankrupt over 20% of U.S. corporations, this according to the IMF. They're in a real corner with this private central banking model. It's reached the shutdown phase. Steen Jacobson, Chief Investment Officer of Saxo Bank, is out there saying there is a 60% probability of a recession in the next 18 months. The world's economy is slowing to a standstill. And it is, except for the weapons factories. Everything's grinding to a halt. Investor Jim Rogers is warning that this next stock market crash will probably be the worst in all of our lifetimes, and it will happen this year or next. He's a frequent analyst on CNBC. Now, the subprime auto industry is in serious trouble. Subprime auto loans are now defaulting at a higher rate than they were back in 2008. And again, you can't run an economy based entirely on debt and have it last. Now, as you know, Tesla has been dealing with all kinds of problems with its stock price, allegations that the cars really aren't what they're supposed to be. And according to this article that came out of Zero Hedge, they're basically saying that if it were not for the immense government subsidies pushing all electric vehicles, Tesla sales would implode. Apparently in 2015 they sold 2,700 cars in Denmark, and in 2016 when Denmark phased out subsidies for the electric vehicles, the number crashed to just 176 units. Tesla's low price is basically propped up. They're nice cars, by the way. I got a chance to see one up close. If I were a rich man, I'd get a Tesla. Actually, I'm looking at a Prius. Claire, we're coming up on, we're going to have to get a new car. I love my Honda. I love my 17-year-old Honda, but it's 17 years old, and so we're going to have to do something about that. Apparently, Apple has lost $50 billion in market cap. Apparently, their sales are down. Citi's analyst Jim Suva said he's lowering his September estimates for iPhone units, total revenues. People just are not buying these new phones. As long as the old ones are still working, nobody feels a strong need to buy the new one. I'm still in my iPhone 5. I take really good care of it. I don't want 6 or 7 or 8 or anything. This does what I need. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to start taking phone calls again, and we're going to start with Rick in Arizona. Aloha, Rick. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mike. I got a comment on the stock market. I think the stock market's pretty much under control. I think the only way it'll come down is if individual people, the 401k selling, because if with video conferencing, I think there's, I don't even think as a fund manager you could put in a sell order, a sizable sell order, without permission from the rest of the fund managers. I think they really do have this under control. So if you try to sell it, a large block, I bet it just gets blocked. I mean, it's so high. I mean, it's 20,000. It should have crashed a long time ago. So, I mean, that's the feeling I get, that they've got it all locked up to where you probably can't even put in a sell order.
Well, that's an interesting theory, and I'd like to know somebody who's actually trading on a scale like that. I think if somebody put in a large order like that and it was blocked, it would be an instant scandal and would trigger a panic, not unlike going into a bank, wanting your savings account closed, and they say, well, we can't do that. That would trigger a run on the bank. Basically, what's happening is as people do sell off their stocks, they're being bought up by the Wall Street firms and the Federal Reserve itself with all this instantly created trillions and trillions of dollars. And this has put the Fed and these Wall Street firms in a serious position because they're holding all of this overvalued stock. They themselves cannot sell it in any sizable chunk without triggering a downturn. But it's a very delicate balancing act. The fact that it is this overvalued is a danger sign. It's more overvalued today than it was leading to the crash of '29. But I think they're trying to control it. I don't think it's under control.
Well, in '29, all the major players would have a meeting every morning, and they all urge not to sell. And somebody ended up selling, and that's what started it. But yeah, I mean, that's just my own theory. You know, with video conferencing and instant messaging, everybody's close together in the market. So whoever sells is going to be the bad guy. That's all I got today, Mike.
Well, the bad guy is going to be the only one who gets out with all of their money, and everybody else is going to be left with a very impressive-looking final report from their stockbroker, and that's all it's going to be, a very impressive-looking piece of paper. All right, Rick, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. And we're also seeing another very disturbing trend in the housing market. Everybody's out there starting to say it's a great time to sell because prices are up. It's a bad time to buy. Certainly we're seeing all kinds of commercials all over TV for all these realtor companies. Oh, yes, we'll sell your house for you and we'll get you into a new house. But it's not looking like it's really taking off over there. And the reason for that is very simple. It's a lack of confidence in the economic future of the United States of America. People don't want to get a 30-year mortgage even at 3.5%, which is insane. You never heard of that. When I was a kid, 30-year mortgages went for 8%, and everybody said that was the norm. That was the normal. Now it's 3.5%. But even so, people don't want to get that mortgage because they're not sure they're going to have their job 1, 2, 3 years from now. They're not sure that they're not going to be forced, like so many millions of other Americans, to have to lose the high-paying job that allowed them to make that mortgage payment and be forced to take a much lower-paying job, which will result in them having to dump their house at fire sale prices just to get out from underneath that mortgage. Now, Boeing got a little bit of good news because Iran has now signed that final contract to buy 30 Boeing 737 planes. It's a good little aircraft. Iran's making a good investment here, and it's good for the people who work for Boeing. All right, let's take another phone call. Frank in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, the last caller just made me call in because I happen to know people very close to me that have put in orders for their investment accounts to be liquidated, and they are being liquidated. I mean, I've seen
okay.
the paper. I mean, I've seen where it's been liquidated. So people are taking money, millions of dollars, out of the market. Trust me, it's being done every day.
Well, and the only way they can keep the market up is the Federal Reserve just creates trillions of dollars of new money and pours it back in at the top. Because ever since the Clinton administration, they're using that stock market as a banner for how good the economy is. And yet, if you walk down the streets of your local town, you can see it's not there. All the retail vacancies, all the hungry, all the homeless, the decayed infrastructure. No, the economy isn't working, except for the people on Wall Street, and they think that's all hunky-dory. We'll be right back after these few words. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about how the housing market is slowing down, mostly because people are unwilling to get into a mortgage at a time when they are not convinced they're going to keep their high-paying job that allows them to make the mortgage payments. And as a result, U.S. home ownership has plummeted to 63%, near its lowest level in more than 50 years. The American dream is turning into a nightmare. All right, let's take a phone call. Jerry in Chicago, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Thanks a lot for taking my call. Hey, something you were just talking about before the break and something with the housing. I've been telling guys for the longest time, look at the car dealerships. The car dealerships not only fill their property with brand new cars, they're also leasing property nearby to put more new cars on there, and they're not moving.
No, they aren't. I mean, they're not going to finish selling the 2016 models until August of this year, according to the latest analysts. And if you watch those TV commercials, I mean, the prices are just amazing. If we actually had money, this would be a wonderful time to be buying a car. But nobody has the money to buy a car, and people are just scared of taking on any more loans because they don't believe they're going to be able to continue in the job to make those payments. That's really what's scaring people away from this.
I agree with you 100%. And, you know, it's funny. I've noticed for about the last 7, 8 years that come October, they run a really big sale on that year's model. And then come November, it's 0% interest for 6 years and all these other incentives, $3,000 cash rebate, and I mean, unbelievable amount of stuff just to get rid of that year's model.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, do you remember when Reagan was president? I think it was Reagan, the Reagan cheese. There was a huge surplus of cheese in the country, and Reagan said, let's just give it away, you know, to poor people. Well, maybe that's how they ought to clear up all of this old car inventory, is just say, all right, we're going to giving them out to people who need cars. I'd certainly vote for a president who gave...
My aunt was on the cheese program, and she couldn't eat that much cheese because the brick was about the size of a bigger house brick that you might see on a Target store.
Oh, they were
or something
huge.
Like that.
They were huge. I had friends who got them. They were just gigantic. You know, but I'll tell you this, I'll vote for a president who gives me a new car.
I think I'd vote for a president who just gave me a brick of cheese every once in a while.
I didn't sell out quite that cheap. I wasn't a big fan of Reagan.
Well, you know, the funny thing is if they just give anything back, that would be a miracle.
That's
true.
Thanks
for taking my call. Have a great day.
You know, you absolutely have hit on a major problem with what's going on in this country. The government takes and takes and takes and takes and takes, and there's nothing coming back. Other countries that have high taxes, you'll get subsidized education or free education. You'll get free or subsidized health care. You actually get things back from the government in exchange for that money. In this country, no. The government has turned into a giant roach motel for your cash. The money will go in and it won't come on out, at least not back at you. It's going to go to special interest groups. It's going to go to Israel. It's going to go to the war machine. And like I said, I think the time has come. We need a cash for clunkers program for the government, where we take our bloated, inefficient, wasteful government, we take it over to the junkyard, we put it in that little mashing machine, and we crunch it on down to this little coffee table-sized block, and then every American gets a $15,000 check with which to buy a new, smaller, much more efficient government. I think the time has come for that idea. We're going to go back to the phones here. Philip in Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I agree with you there, except probably take more than $15,000, as much as they took from me.
$15,000 will be enough for us to buy a small slim, efficient government. We don't want a big one. We don't want the Cadillac of governments. We want the Prius of governments.
Yeah, well, I was kind of calculating a little rebate in there, for ourselves, But, what I want to talk about was see if you've got any info about this latest avenue that this sedition party is going down here with regards to the lawsuit that was filed today by the DAs of Maryland and D.C. with the accusation or the allegation of Trump in violation of the emoluments clause.
Well, again, it's showing hypocrisy and double standard, because look at all the emoluments that poured into the Clinton Foundation, and nobody made a big stink about that.
Oh, absolutely. But, I don't know if you've, done any research on it or anything like that. You got any inside information or anything that's, because that's why I call them the hypocrite party. Everything they accuse President Trump of, they are guilty over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, normally in our country, we've had presidents coming into office whose personal wealth wasn't all that great, which made the imposition of the blind trust requirement fairly easy. Obviously, with Donald Trump, it was a very different story. He's a very wealthy man. He's got buildings with his name on them. It really is very difficult to have a blind trust. What Trump has done is basically given control of the business to his offspring. And supposedly there's not a lot of communication there. That's not going to make the Democrats very happy. But again, the blind trust requirement clearly can't be made to work here. It's not a question that Trump is trying to evade it the way the Clintons did. It simply cannot be implemented given Trump's vast wealth. That being said, again, if you want to talk about violations of the emoluments clause, you've got no further to look than that Clinton Foundation. And it is amazing how the leftists and the corporate media are still willing to give Hillary a free pass on that $2.8 billion that poured in from Russia at the same time she was helping secure that Uranium One deal.
Well, they're giving us the Officer Bar Brady treatment on that. Nothing to see here. Move along, you lucky lose.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, I noticed one thing in the story that came out about that lawsuit. They're still trying to go after his taxes, his tax returns from, they want to see his tax returns. So they're still trying to whip up the class warfare argument, and that should, give Antifa some more fuel to light their fire.
At this point, I think probably the vast majority of Americans are just getting tired of all this nonsense, especially after the Comey testimony turned out to be nothing. I think people are just ready to say, we're sick and tired of this. We've got a country to fix. Let's get to it. And I think that the Democrats and the liberals are literally hoisting on their own petard on this by pursuing it. And I can understand why more and more of the Democratic leadership is saying it really is time to let all this stuff go, and it's time for Hillary Clinton to shut the heck up and fade from public life. Instead of being out there saying, I'm going to re-enter the political fray. She's become a huge liability. She's an albatross around the neck of the Democratic Party. As long as she is out there flapping her gums, the Democrats are not going to have a chance to take Congress next year. They're not going to have much of a chance to be able to dethrone Trump in 2020. The Democratic leadership needs to do something. Right now, the very best thing that could happen, not just for Trump, not just for the Democrats, but for the country as a whole, Hillary needs to go down on at least one of these charges in order to get her out of play so that all of this nonsense can stop. And it's very important for the American people right now who understand Hillary was being protected all last year. They need to see justice done to one of the elites and the powerful to reassure them that we are still a nation of laws and not a nation of absolutism where the nobility are allowed to do whatever they want and the laws only apply to we serfs.
Well, I think not only she needs to be, like you say, at least to have one charge stick to her. And you remember one of the campaign mantras was lock her up. I think we need to apply this to the whole deep state, lock them up.
Well, I would like to see that happen, but at this particular point, again, getting back to politics as perception, the American people are watching very closely what Trump is doing, especially all those Americans who were in those sports venues shouting, lock her up. They're getting impatient to see the government actually try and act like it's a government again. And this is not coming out of a desire for revenge. What we're looking at right now is the expediency of being able to get past all this nonsense and start to work on the problems that afflict the nation. This continued tantrum coming from the liberals and the Hillaryites, it is a needless distraction. It doesn't have a snowball's chance in the dark regions of ever working. It is causing a lot of harm to the nation as a whole. And we've got to find a way to basically get them to just shut up and go back to being Americans alongside the rest of us.
There you go. Okay, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Still talking about the economy. Apparently, Illinois is in deep financial trouble. And apparently, Illinois Comptroller Susana Mendoza was ordered to make a substantial dent in a $2 billion backlog of bills owed to Medicaid providers. And the courts have already ruled that according to Illinois' state constitution, it cannot reduce the pension payments to state employees. Talk about being between a rock and a hard place. And so apparently payments that are coming from Medicaid or possibly Medicare, they're being hugely delayed. The money just isn't there. The money just isn't there. This country's in serious, serious trouble. Apparently, Ann Taylor, Dress Barn, Loft, and Lane Bryant are announcing a closure of 650 stores over the next 2 years. Children's retailer Gymboree has filed bankruptcy. They're closing 450 stores. Now, Jim Cramer, who's out there with his investment advice, and he's so popular, he's actually done cameos in movies, like Iron Man. He was on Iron Man. Apparently, he's out there now screaming, Bitcoin could hit $1 million, so buy, buy, buy. I think Jim Cramer is a pump-and-dump scammer. He can make or break a stock on his show, and I think he uses that. And I'd like to see how his investment portfolio lines up with the stocks that he's promoting or denigrating on his program. I think we give too much power to the financial sector of the corporate media. They can influence the markets tremendously. Now, as you know, one of the more abusive practices that we are seeing in this country is civil forfeiture. And it is being used at pretty much every level of our society, from ordinary police all the way up to government agencies like the Drug Enforcement Agency. And apparently it is really out of control, where the DEA basically just hang out at the airport and wait for money to fall into their laps. And the Justice Department's Inspector General recently issued a report that found the Drug Enforcement Agency seized a whopping $4 billion with a B dollars in cash over the last 10 years, using civil asset forfeiture, mostly from airports, train stations, and bus terminals. And apparently in 81% of the cases, there were no accompanying criminal charges. These seizures have little to do with criminal investigations. It's all a cash grab. Now, back in 2016, an investigation by USA Today found the DEA regularly mines American citizens' travel information and relies on confidential informants in the travel industry who get kickbacks for snooping on suspicious passengers. So that person who was selling you your ticket, they need to make their car payment. They call it the DEA, ooh, I just had somebody at the counters looking really, really shifty. and the DEA grabs you. They take your money. They hand some of it to that ticket agent who makes the payment on their car. It's wide open to graft and corruption. And they're not actually focusing on the drug war. It's just another excuse to plunder and pillage and loot the American people. Now, do you remember Harry Markopoulos? He was the investigator who exposed the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. It took him 12 years of going to the Securities Exchange Commission and saying, look, this guy's committing a fraud. Oh, it couldn't be. Bernie Madoff, he's the co-founder of NASDAQ. He would never do a thing like that. And, of course, it came on out. Well, apparently, Markopoulos has found a new fraud involving the Boston Transit Authority, and basically is saying the unfunded status of their pension fund is $500 million larger than previously thought. Now, this is obviously going to have a significant impact on Boston's municipal bond market, especially if it turns out if the problems are endemic among similar pension funds. And basically said, Markopoulos said, the $500 million gap is due to bad investments, like those mortgage-backed securities back in 2008, outright fraudulent accounting, and unrealistic actuarial assumptions. Boy, I remember when I was young, accounting was simple. How much did you bring in? How much did you have to spend? The rest of it's your profit. Now it's all seasonal adjustments and actuarial forecasting and birth-death model. And it's no wonder you can't get accurate data out of any of this stuff anymore. It's intentional. Now, while Donald Trump attempts to turn the page on all of this Comey nonsense, he's hitting the road next week to focus on workforce development, getting people to start putting jobs back out there for the American people. And apparently, first daughter Ivanka Trump is going to be going along with him. That'll be a big draw. A lot of people are going to want to see her. But again, Trump is trying to get back to his agenda of bringing the jobs back. And that's why it's time for all of this Comey, impeachment, he's mentally ill, Russia collusion. It's time for all of that stuff to stop. Those people who are still out there attacking the president for whatever reason, they are causing harm to our country by getting in the way of his trying to make things better. And I don't agree with everything Trump has done. But he is the president. He was elected, overcoming media bias and massive election fraud. He's the boss. We all got to live with that. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And apparently the corporate media is in trouble. People don't trust them anymore. They're turning away. They're coming here to the independent media to find out what's really going on because they're sick and tired of being lied to. And apparently one of the companies, Cumulus Media, things are going from bad to worse, and they're on the brink of collapsing right now. And apparently when former Chief Executive Lou Dickey left in September of 2015, the stock was already an anemic $5.45. Last Friday, Cumulus shares closed at 52 cents each. And I have no sympathy. They did it to themselves. Because nobody likes being lied to. Now then, as you know, one of the big issues up in Ukraine is the Turkish Stream pipeline. And Ukraine is opposing its completion, basically to flip the finger at Russia. And Russia has now responded. Their Gazprom, Greece's DEPA, and Italy's Edison have now signed an agreement to build a second pipeline that will bypass Ukraine in order to bring gas supplies from Russia to Europe. It will run across Turkey and Greece to Italy. That's one way of dealing with it, I think. Meanwhile, despite the OPEC agreement, which the U.S. is not part of OPEC, obviously, but they're an oil exporting country, and apparently they're sucking the stuff out and exporting it as hard as they can, and it's triggered a warning that these record-breaking U.S. exports could actually hurt the oil markets and drive prices back down. Now, the last time they did that, it was an intentional form of economic warfare against Russia that actually backflashed and caused a lot more damage to countries like Canada and Venezuela than it actually, and the Middle East, than it did to Russia, because their economy turned out to be more diversified and more resilient than the analysts had predicted. Now, as you know, a lot of people are still talking about how great it'll be to have a cashless society, and we're all on the plastic cards, and won't it be great? That'll be a wonderful thing. Well, it's a good thing for the banks, obviously, but the illustrations of why this is a problem are out there. We were talking about supermarket card machines that quit, and now in Clayton County, Georgia, they've had a major whoopsie where people who are on food stamps got to the supermarket and discovered the cards were empty. There was nothing on them. Now, Clayton County is saying it's some kind of a goof or snafu. They don't know where. They're still having to investigate. And until they find and solve the problem, the people who are dependent on those food stamp cards, they cannot buy anything at the store. So cards are okay for certain things, but yes, you still have to have cash, because sooner or later those electronic card machines are not going to be working. We'll be right back after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we are going to go to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I know you're probably not talking about this right now, but I just received a message 20 minutes ago from Alex Jones, as you know, on my Facebook there, you know, and he's I decided, let me see what he's talking about, because he was talking about the Megan Kelly interview. He's losing it, man. He's not. This isn't the Alex Jones that I know that I used to be a fan of, and that brought me into the alternate media. Really, he's now saying that. You know, he's practically begging this witch, and that's what she is, a witch, to not hold that, you know, not show the interview on Father's Day. Evidently, she's planning on holding on Father's Day because of the Sandy Hook business. But first of all, the Sandy Hoax business, excuse me. First of all, he should have known better than to be interviewed by her in the first place. Now, Vladimir Putin was interviewed, but Putin is one of the smartest men, I think, in the world. Probably got an IQ close to 200, and he knows how to handle her.
Yes.
Okay? Jones didn't. Instead, Jones now is concerned about Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook is a hoax, a total hoax. Nobody was killed there. Adam Lanza is a fictional character. He didn't even exist. I've talked to Wolfgang Halbig many times. I've contributed money to his cause. All right? He's wide open on what he said. Like I said, he puts his phone number out there. He's of an experienced school safety, very experienced school safety expert, former principal, former teacher, former state trooper, former customs inspector, and myself as an ex-law enforcement officer. I'm telling you, the man couldn't do his research much more thorough. This never happened. It was put on by crisis actors.
We understand that. We understand that. But actually, Alex may be off the hook because the latest word I'm getting is that NBC has come down on Megyn Kelly very, very hard for legitimizing Alex Jones and, by extension, the independent media as a whole by giving or by planning on giving him airtime on her program. NBC may actually spike that interview themselves.
Well, even if they do, I mean, for Jones to get this upset and this uptight, first of all, he's given the cold shoulder for the last couple of years to Wolfgang Halbig, even though Rob Due's uncle, who's an ex-FBI agent, had talked to Due and told him that there's something very strange about this. This does not seem right, this whole thing about Sandy Hoax. You don't run away from stuff like that. I know you don't run away from it.
Nope.
And I know a lot of other people don't run away from it. It's all over the net. John B. Wells has contributed money to this man. He's had him on his show numerous times.
We've had him on our show.
Makes no doubt. No. Huh?
We've had we've had Wolfgang Halbig on this show.
I wish you'd have him on again. Boy, that man is great. He is a true, real, honest-to-goodness patriot. He's a refugee, by the way, he's an immigrant to this country from Germany originally, came over as a young boy,
so proud to be an American. He's everything this country at least once stood for. This guy is just, and he was shocked when he found this out. He just thought he could, help a little bit and then he saw so many discrepancies, he realized there was something wrong. And then they actually sent cops to his house to threaten him.
Yeah, I remember.
The state of Connecticut somehow got local deputies to come to his house and threaten him. He told them where to go, but, that shouldn't have happened either. So obvious that this is a hoax.
Yes.
Jones is running away from that now. He is running away from his own supporters. He's running away from the alternate media. That's what he's doing now. I don't know, maybe he wants to impress, maybe he thinks Trump wouldn't like this stuff about Sandy hoax. I don't know what the deal is.
Well, let me come out here and give you a couple of things to think about. First of all, we know that Alex is constrained by the interests of the people who invested in his network to build the studios and all the rest of it. It was a huge amount of money that came on in, and nobody writes a check. I don't actually know, but I'm just saying, when somebody comes on in and offers you a few $1 million to build a network and studios and everything, they're going to be tapping you on the shoulder and say, this you can talk about, this you can't talk about. We know that Alex is a strong supporter of Israel and always has been. There's a YouTube video of him on one of his earlier radio shows just saying out there, I stand with Israel and all the rest of it. There may be something else that's going on. Alex Jones has been getting more and more attention from the corporate media, and Alex Jones may be thinking that he can actually do a crossover where he maybe now be dreaming. He's gone as far as he can with the independent media, has done very well, and he may be thinking that he could actually make the jump over to the corporate media side. He wouldn't be the first. Rachel Maddow was originally, when she was out there starting, she was considered independent media. And Alex Jones...
Well, then he'd be a sellout.
Well, we certainly saw that with Rachel. But Alex, that may be his ambition. That may be his ambition. That would explain why all of a sudden he's not going to be going at Sandy Hook and the rest of it.
You know what this reminds me of? I know you're a big movie fan and all that.
Yeah.
The old movie, I'd like to see it again, too. Hopefully they'll show it. They should really do a remake. Viva Zapata.
Yes.
Right? Marlon Brando was the chief. He was an Indian chief. It's a real story. It's based on a real story. I think for the Yaqui tribe.
Yes.
And he was one of the revolutionaries take over Mexico. And Anthony Quinn was like his, assistant, his deputy chief. Okay? And he finally succeeded to take over. And then he started doing stuff that the previous dictators started doing. And Quinn came over to him and said, look, he went over to Brando and he told him, hey, look, you do the same. Who was Zapata? He went over to Zapata and told him, look, you're starting to become the same thing that we all fought against so hard. And he said, and he realized he was right. And he said, now what this is all historically true, I'm not sure. And he stepped down, and that was it. That's what Alex Jones should do. He's becoming too big. He shouldn't be looking at this. He should be looking at who brought him to the dance. Okay? He's always put himself out there as a patriot above everything else. If he's, and as far as Israel goes, I heard him, over 9/11, he brought out the fact about the dancing Israelis and things like that he thought the Mossad was behind it. I don't know if you know this guy, One Race. He calls himself One Race. He's on YouTube. He even brought out some of old Alex Jones' old shows and all that. Some of the things he said. He's just, like I said, if he's going to sell out, he should get off the air, because then he's becomes a total phony. No longer a member of the alternate media.
I'm not going to join you on that one. Again, first of all, because I don't think the independent media has reached a point where we should allow ourselves to get into faction fights with each other. I would like to see the independent media pull together to create a single network that would have the resources and the reach rivaling those of the corporate media networks. As far as Alex Jones, he has the same First Amendment right to his opinion that the rest of us do.
I agree.
And the final determination, though, will be his audience. Is he gaining audience? Let me finish the thought. I'm hearing the anger in your voice. I'm hearing the anger in other people who've called in about Alex Jones. I get a lot of email about him. And ultimately, if his audience feels that he is turning on them, they will simply start to go someplace else. And Alex Jones's numbers are going to go down. And that's the way it is supposed to work. Again, I don't agree with much that Alex Jones says, but I have to be, in the spirit of full disclosure here, I still have a tremendous amount of gratitude to Alex Jones because he was the one who got me my first talk radio show 10 years ago, and I really can't talk about Alex Jones or think about him without remembering that, he did do that for me. And so there's always going to be that gratitude and a little bit of respect out of that situation. So that's where I am on that, okay?
Yeah, I understand about, everybody standing together, and I agree. I agree with that. But for crying out loud, don't go spit at a guy like Wolfgang Halbig. This guy's not rich. This is a guy who's a regular, guy, a retired man living, in a small house there in northern Florida somewhere. He's a good man, all right? He's trying to be he's being a patriot, and he needs all the support he can get. He should be in all these shows. I'm not just saying yours. I mean all the various shows. This man needs our support, and not to be belittled, and not because he's trying to impress us. Not he's trying to say because Megyn Kelly got him upset about this. I don't care what Megyn Kelly says. I couldn't care less. That woman is a fraud. She's a fraud from the word go. She's the one who even thinks we should be forced into taking vaccines. The woman is no good. I don't know why he gave an interview to her in the first place.
Like I said, I think he's courting the corporate media. I think he wants to cross over.
Oh, he's going to cut his own throat if he does that. I hate to say it.
No, I don't know. It worked out well for Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, Rachel Maddow's on the left, though. He's not. Okay?
Okay.
Rachel Maddow is basically in tune with MSNBC and stations like that. Jones isn't even liked by Fox, let alone the leftist stations. Okay? He's not, if he thinks the corporate media is going to turn to him, he's crazy. It just ain't going to happen. The best thing would be, like you said, the alternate, or the independent media finally gets together, we get our own TV stations, our own radio stations, and we go after the corporate media and we put them out of business, hopefully.
Okay,
they don't deserve to be in business.
We don't have to go after the corporate media. They're doing a very good job of destroying themselves. You can look at their audience numbers, their readership, their ad revenues. Remember, it was about a month ago somebody exposed the websites for the corporate media outlets were using Chinese click bots to artificially inflate their readership, which is defrauding their advertisers. We just sit back and let them do it to themselves.
And by the way, people got to get on that Glenn Beck. People got to turn off Glenn Beck. This man is an aberration. He's the one, by the way, who started this whole Russian nonsense. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Last July. He actually started a year before when he talked about Alexander Dugin. Like he's behind all the fascism and everything else going on in the world. And then last year, around July, he started the whole thing again, how the Russians were behind Donald Trump and all that. He's the one who started this.
Well, apparently, Glenn is now out there saying that his departure from Fox News is a liberal plot to get conservative voices off the corporate media. But again,
he's not a conservative voice.
Well, that's what he's saying is going on. Anyway, Mark, we're going to let you go. We're going to take another phone call from James in St. Thomas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. Oh, first of all, we're going to do we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. I missed that at 6 after. Okay, James, go ahead. What's on your mind?
Hey, on my call.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Could you say that again?
Yes, I'm thinking afternoon to you. I was calling to see whatever happened to John Dung in Barbados.
He passed away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were all very saddened by that.
Okay, because I listen to the show almost every day, and I have not heard him. So I was trying to figure out what happened to him.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that said, I was just calling to tell you you're still doing an excellent job after all this time I've been listening to you, and you have a lot of big fans in the Virgin Islands. So we're still looking forward for you to giving up Hawaii and perhaps moving to the islands, you know.
Well, I did love Barbados. I did love Barbados when I was down there. Claire and I would really like to move back to the mainland before we get in a shooting war with Russia and China. And we're just trying to figure out a way where we can make that happen. Unfortunately, it is very expensive to move here, to move to the mainland from here in Hawaii, mostly because we have so much that we have to take with us that we simply could not replace on the other end. Claire's harp, for example, all of our computer equipment, our production equipment, we're ready to leave everything else behind, all the furniture and everything else, but there's still a large amount of material, and we're looking at the possibility of getting one of those pods and pack it ourselves, because the estimates we got from the professional movers are all in the range of $25,000 to $30,000. And, of course, when we get to the other side, we're going to have first, last security on a new place to live, and it's going to be a huge, huge project. But we are trying to get back to the mainland, and as soon as it happens, we'll all let you know, okay?
Okay, good. And one more thing. Whatever happened to Joyce Riley? I don't so much hear her voice on radio, the network.
Her health is very, very bad, and she's probably not going to be with us for much longer if she has not already passed.
Wow, sad to hear that. She, along with you, shared the #1 position.
Yeah.
But, I just hope the best for her, and hope things take a turn for the better. But know there's a lot of people trying to get into your show. I'm gonna give you my best wishes, and I'm listening every day. I don't miss one show. Okay? You continue to go to work, and we love. Come on to St. Thomas when you're ready.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love the Virgin Islands, and let's see. I'm trying to find out the latest on Joyce Riley. The last I heard was that she was in a hospice, so we'll get an update on that. All right, James, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Now, getting on back to Europe and Brexit and EU and the rest of it. Apparently, Bulgaria is now advocating for Bosnia and Herzegovina to integrate into the European Union. I'm not sure what Bosnia and Herzegovina are thinking about that. They have to be looking at all that is going on inside the EU. To the member nations. In fact, the Czech Republic has now joined Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia in refusing any more of these migrants that are coming on in. So that's a very tense situation there. Now, as a result of Theresa May's declines in the last election, the Remainers in Great Britain are seeing an opportunity to possibly soften the Brexit, or even put it on hold, or even possibly get rid of it, forgetting, of course, that the British people voted for this. But unfortunately, in Great Britain and in Europe, as is often the case here in the United States of America, the politicians are unconcerned with what the people want and far more concerned with what their financial backers and colleagues are interested in doing. And we know that that push for a new world order, a global government, is still out there, although apparently Jacob Rothschild was overheard making a statement to the effect that he thinks the project is pretty much failing at this point. So we'll see where that goes. Now, in response to the story we had in the first hour about Reuters completely reversing what came out of Comey's testimony, somebody actually sent me this article where somebody caught ABC News re-editing the video of Comey's testimony to make it look like James Comey was talking about Attorney General Jeff Sessions instead of Loretta Lynch, and about Donald Trump instead of Hillary Clinton, trying to do a very clever edit to put the spin on there. And this is why the corporate media is in serious trouble, because more and more people are now aware that this is going on, and nobody likes a liar. Nobody likes a liar at all. So let's talk about human-caused global warming. And apparently the founder of the Weather Channel, John Coleman, is making the rounds being interviewed. He was interviewed on CNN, and apparently the interview did not go well for CNN. They're already out there pushing the global warming, got to have a carbon tax, got to have a carbon tax. Humans are warming the world. And more and more people are speaking out saying, this isn't science, it's politics. It's political. None of this stuff followed the scientific method. There's no reproducibility. The real world is not lining up with all the dire warnings that came out of the global warmists over the last 10 years. It simply has not happened. And to underscore the fact that we may actually be going into a new mini ice age, they are getting snow out in the west down to 5,800 feet in California's Sierra Nevada this morning. This is June. Down to 5,800 feet. It's a major, major storm. More when we come back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about human-caused global warming and how the indications are that we are actually headed into a new mini ice age. We know that the amount of energy that we receive from the sun is the dominant factor that controls climate here on Earth, and solar output is very low right now. Looks like a repeat of what was called the Maunder minimum that triggered the last mini ice age. So they're having snow out in the Rocky Mountains down to 5,800 feet. That is unheard of in the month of June. And apparently there is a nor'easter traveling up the east coast of the USA and Canada this week, and they're saying they may get snow out of that in June. Now, as you know, we have these out-of-season blizzards and unseasonable cold across the nation, and they've tallied up the numbers and discovered there was a 25% loss of the wheat crop for the spring of this year. I know they came on out early on and said, you know, the cold and the blizzard had nothing to do with it, but no, that isn't it. It's been a major, major difficulty here. Now, speaking of crunching the numbers, apparently somebody is out there in California looking at what Arizona's legalization of marijuana has done, and they have concluded that legalizing marijuana will boost California's economy by $5 billion. And they're starting to talk about legalization in California as well. Now, this report came out of the University of California Agricultural Issues Center. And they said the legalization of the drug will provide the state a further reason for tourists to visit. Yeah, they saw that in Arizona. People want to go where they can have fun and not get harassed for it. Meanwhile, more and more attention is being brought to bear on the opium overdose problem here in the United States of America. In fact, right now, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein is saying drug overdose is now the leading cause of death for American adults under the age of 50. And yes, some of it is coming from that street opium that's coming over from Afghanistan. There's a lot more of it that is coming on from the prescription industry, prescription opioids. Remember last week we reported where they're actually starting to prosecute these pharmaceutical corporations for incentivizing doctors to prescribe these opiates to get patients hooked, get them addicted, so that they're going to go on being loyal customers and a constant stream of revenue. That is how corrupted the medical industrial complex has become. It's not about your health. It's not about curing anything. It's about selling constant treatments. And if necessary, creating the condition that requires the treatments. In this case, opium addiction. Now, over at the Fluoride Action Network, they're getting ready to file a lawsuit that could conceivably ban all water fluoridation in the United States based on recent evidence confirming that fluoride is a neurotoxin. It damages your nerves and your brain. And they're going to try and take it to court and say this practice must stop. Now, it's already been established that drinking fluoridated water has no effect on tooth decay, which was what it was sold about. Oh, we're going to put fluoride in the water and your teeth will be white and shiny and never have any cavities. Actually, in a lot of places, it turned the teeth brown. But that's okay, because now we have our whitening strips we can sell you. But along with being a neurotoxin, fluoride is also a very mild tranquilizer. And maybe one of the reasons we have not had major rioting across the country or a new civil war is that people who are drinking fluoridated water are a little more relaxed and hard to rile on up. And this comes right out of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where everybody was medicated by law. And we are there with mandatory vaccines. We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I must have said something that angered somebody, because the children have just launched a massive denial of service attack on my web server. And so we'll just let them have their little tantrum and roll around on the ground and kick and scream and cry that the world is not the way they want it to be. And eventually they'll get tired and they will go away. Now then, as you know, there is a continuing concern over the problem of aging nuclear reactors that are being allowed to operate past the end of their design life. Now, when you build a nuclear reactor power plant, it is designed for a certain amount of time, because under the heavy neutron flux, the metal in the reactor itself and the containment vessel starts to fatigue. As the neutrons pass through, it weakens the metal bonding, and after a while it starts to get brittle and fragile, and at that point you shut it down and decommission it. And because reactors are so expensive to decommission, not to mention replace, a lot of reactors are saying, well, we're pretty sure things are okay. Let us run for another 10 years. And unfortunately, governments are all too eager to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and let you do that. But apparently over at the Tihange 2 Belgian Dole 3 nuclear power plant near Antwerp, they are starting to find major cracks. And there was another story came out last week where 2 other reactors in Europe were found to show an increase in the number of what are called the micro cracks. So again, this is a major, major problem. And again, I think it is very possible to have these technologies work. I think it's possible to have them be safe, to have them serve the community. You just have to take the safety decisions away from the money junkies. Because in every one of these disasters, what you find is that the engineers made recommendations as to what was needed to keep the reactor safe, or the dam safe, or whatever. And some executives said, we really don't need to spend the money on that. And again, the classic example of that would be Fukushima and its fellow reactors along the coast of Japan, because the power station at Onagawa, the chief design engineer who was responsible for building that, just stood his ground and said, I will not allow you to pull back on any of the safety systems we've designed. And it is a shame that he did not live to see the vindication of his policy, because Onagawa was the only reactor along that coastline that survived the quake and tsunami. We're going to take a phone call here. David in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
Okay. First off, number one, I got to say, I just love Claire. I'm a musician, too. Have been my whole life, and she just always comes up with really creative things, and I really appreciate you playing a lot of her.
Well, yes, and she's absolutely.
Yeah, she's great. But I have to question something you mentioned here a minute ago about the legalization of marijuana in Arizona, and California's thinking about it.
Yeah.
Hello. I believe, being that I grow it and smoke it and all that stuff, it's legal here. And you said Arizona, Arizona, it's not legal.
Didn't Arizona decriminalize it? You can buy it recreationally?
I've never heard of that. Colorado certainly did, but
Oh, I may have confused it with Colorado. My apologies to the good people of Arizona. Colorado. You're right. I'm wrong.
Those big square states get confusing.
Yes, they do. Actually, they really do. So where are you?
Yeah, we're good.
Where are you geographically?
I'm in Lake Arrowhead, California.
Okay, and you're telling me that marijuana is already legalized there?
I'm growing plants, sir.
That's
I can go up to 6 of them.
That's okay. That's medical marijuana.
No, recreational marijuana is legal in California.
Oh well, maybe I'll move back there after all.
There you go. Here comes Mike.
What do you keep? We got the best pakalolo here in Hawaii. It's not legal. It's not legal.
What's the status of it there? Can you grow it legally or have it or what?
To be very honest, I don't think so. I don't know because the actual truth is, for all my joking about it, I haven't indulged in marijuana since my first marriage because recreational drugs remind me of my first wife, and I hate anything that reminds me of my first wife.
Gotcha. Well, that'll keep you straight. Well, anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we knew that California is actually recreationally and medically a marijuana state, and Arizona, to my knowledge, has fought it tooth and nail. But Colorado is, I think, what you meant.
Yeah, you're correct. I made a mistake. It's Colorado.
Okay. Hey, you're entitled. God, you're on the air all the time. So hey.
I do get a little bit scattered here. Here.
Well, it's okay. I've got a year or two on you, but it happens to me too. And I love your show, man. Keep hanging in there and fighting the good fight.
I will do my best here. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Rob in Chicago. Aloha, Rob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, hopefully, again, your trip back here to the States gets quicker. I wanted to talk about the nuclear plants and that. It just, to me, I just don't understand. I know that all these globalists, basically, they probably have been over-fluoridated themselves, so they don't realize that allowing these nuke plants to sit there and rot away and the Hanford site and all this stuff, that we don't need to invest in like the tokamak fusion reactors that we just have to go with the old technology that's highly toxic and it'll ruin the earth. It cracks me up. And I know the Russians are getting into them.
Oh yeah, they've achieved break even with hot fusion reactors. There's also the thorium cycle reactors that are a lot cleaner. But the reason the U.S. continues to work with fission power reactors is you get bomb stuff out the backside.
Oh, yeah, and I did catch a major article and news over the weekend that out at the Oroville Dam, it was very validated, very documented that there was 31 trucks that brought 31 different atomic munition devices out from under the dam the day that it was about ready to collapse. They were storing them under there.
That's a little scary.
If you look up Paul Preston, I know he's friends with one of John's ex-cohorts, but Paul Preston's a very good guy, Agenda 21 Radio. He's out in the area. He's got eyewitnesses that were there. If you look up Paul Preston's thing, it's just really scary because when you get into, these were military grade because they used them all over the world when they went into do the nice regime change and blow up countries. What they would do is blow up the infrastructure first. They could use them to destroy dams and, of course, render the poor population, pretty defenseless. So they apparently, with the nice governor out there, Brown, the communist, he wants to get rid of all the dams. He's done everything in his power to divert money from maintaining them, repairing them, and everything else, but I wouldn't put it past him to have in mind to possibly take those little buggers and blow up a whole bunch of dams out there because he wants to go back to nature. And obviously that's part of their Agenda 21, idea. They don't really need all those people in California. They just can kill off a bunch. And everything will go back to natural then.
Well, it's a major problem. it is amazing where they store some of this stuff. We have an issue here in Hawaii where at the end of World War II, they dumped a whole bunch of unused munitions just in the ocean. And, you know, if you get a mariner's chart, not a tourist map, but an actual mariner's chart for the islands, there are all these areas marked in red. Do not fish here. Do not do drag netting here. And you just stay out of those parts of the ocean. And there's actually a recognized fish dead zone just to the west of the entry of Pearl Harbor, and they're not even sure what's causing that. But it is an issue. And they're not very careful where they put this stuff. I guess the attitude is, well, we're just going to bury it here, and somewhere down the road somebody else will clean up the mess.
Well, I do highly suspect that a lot of this stuff is just carelessness, but I do believe that if you follow the story on the Oroville Dam and how much it affects everything, these crazy people in charge out there, or you know, the backstabbing deep state, would have no issue destroying that dam, and it'll take out 25. It'll take out you've said it, stated it, the rice producing area, number 2, number 3, depending on the time.
Yeah, but I don't see a reason for them doing that. I mean, frankly, I have to be very honest. I think it's a little out there. And I know there were people who are out there claiming that tall buildings are built with demolition charges built in. But the possibility of an unfortunate accident, I really don't see that. I understand that things are stored in certain inappropriate locations, but if you're out here trying to suggest that the Oroville Dam is actually built to be blown up at some point in the future, I have to say that really does not make a lot of sense.
Well, I don't know. The point being is that would be one of the globalist last vestiges or last chances to cause that anarchy, and out of chaos comes order. That's you know, it's not that far of a stretch because we already know that.
Well, I think it is a stretch. I think it is a stretch. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go here, and we're going to switch over to Rob in Chicago. Rob, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Rob, are you there?
Michael.
Yes. You're on the air. What's on your mind? Okay, we're going to drop Rob in Chicago. Let's go to Scott in California. Aloha, Scott. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, hello, Michael. I just heard your little comment about moving, and you mentioned $25,000 to $30,000 for a moving company. You know, you can take your stuff. I don't know how much stuff you want to move, but you can take it over to the Madison terminal, and they'll stuff the box for you right there. And when you get to the mainland side, either Oakland or L.A., just bring your moving truck and load it back up.
We may do that. I've actually had a few suggestions sent in already on how to do this for much less money, and yeah, we're definitely going to be looking at less expensive ways to do that. So okay.
Okay, talk to you later.
All right. And I'm sorry for hemming and hawing, but my server just crashed, and I'm getting it back up and running again here. Okay, just 2 more here, and yeah, they're really attacking the server. I must have said something to upset somebody. I wonder what that could be. So just give me 2 seconds here, and they're already back in on it. They're pounding on it as hard as they can. All right, let's get this stuff going. All right, let's go here. All right, now then. Okay, do we have any callers on the line? I guess not. Okay. Now, there's a very good series on right now about Albert Einstein, and it's called Genius. It's a mini-series. It's actually pretty accurate. It does give fair treatment to his wife, who was actually quite a strong contributor to his theoretical work in a culture where women were not recognized as really belonging in the sciences until Marie Curie came along. One of the things you need to understand is when Einstein came out with his theory of relativity, the world did not come out and say, oh, it's the theory of relativity, it's going to reshape everything. It was actually a lot of years where everybody thought Einstein was just full of it. And Einstein literally had to wait for a total solar eclipse because he predicted, because of relativity, that the gravity of the sun would cause starlight passing by it to bend slightly. And obviously the only way you're going to see that is with a total solar eclipse. So this eclipse came and they took plates that captured the background stars. And then later on they compared them with plates taken of the same area of the sky when the sun was somewhere else and discovered that yes, indeed, the starlight had in fact shifted. The stars had appeared to move slightly outward from where the sun is. And that was the confirmation where they said, yes, this is what's really going on out there. Well, over at NASA Space Telescope Science Institute, they're using that same methodology to measure the mass of stars because they're finding stars that are exhibiting what's called the gravitational lens effect. And by measuring how much the background stars are being distorted, they're able to go back through that math work and actually determine the mass of the star, which I think is a really good methodology. And they need to take it one step further because one of the ways they've been estimating the mass of these planets that they see eclipsing stars is, again, just measuring at how much the light falls off. But even planets have enough mass to be impacting the path of light, especially when seen from hundreds of light years away. And they may be overestimating the mass of those planets by not taking that gravitational lensing effect into account and giving it a little bit of bias or a little bit of a correction factor there. So a lot of fun stuff out there. Now, as you know, I've often talked about how much human history has been lost to, for example, the ice ages and erosion and the occasional supervolcano over time, because apparently new fossil human bones have been found in Morocco that show humans as we are today have been on this planet for 300,000 years. And this idea that we have been on this planet this long and only developed writing and technology in the last 10,000 years, I'm not sure I go along with that. It's intriguing. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the last segment of our program today. We're talking about all the kind of science stuff that we like here. They had a 6.3 quake in Greece earlier today. Not a lot of reports of damage or anything like this. Over in Myanmar, researchers have found a 99-million-year-old bird encased in amber. Now, amber, especially if you watch the movie Jurassic Park, amber will often catch small insects and creatures in them. Amber is used in making jewelry. And there are actually people who prefer amber jewelry with the trapped bugs, and then there are the purists who only want the amber that is absolutely clear on that one. But in this case, somehow an entire bird was encased in amber, and apparently the bird has teeth in it, which is one of the transitionary forms, going from dinosaurs to birds. So scientists from China's University of Geoscience mined this specimen. It's 3 inches long. It's a little tiny bird, but it's still an entire bird. It's the most complete ever found from the Cretaceous period. So that is really an exciting find. There are a lot of areas in China that are rich with fossils that have never really been developed, never explored. And that's why so many brand new dinosaurs are now being discovered in China. Here in the U.S., it's all pretty much been mined on out. And again, fossils they're cool things to give to kids. We're still getting aftershocks following that 5.3 magnitude quake that hit the Big Island. And again, Claire and I didn't feel it, but apparently some people on Oahu did. Now, interestingly enough, over in New York City, they've noticed the humpback whales have started returning. And this is like the first time in a century. Something is going on where ocean patterns are changing. We know there's a lot of mass die-offs along the west coast of the U.S. A lot of people are concerned that it's petrochemical runoff or fracking fluid runoff, or it could be the result of radiation which is still leaking out of Fukushima. And maybe the humpback whales just decided or somehow intuitively knew that the Atlantic is now a friendlier place to be than the Pacific. But it is interesting to see. Now, we have humpback whales here in Hawaii. People like to go on out and whale watch. Claire and I have been out there with the whales a large number of times as well. Hawaii really is a beautiful place. But we have been here for a lot of years, and we're feeling that it's time for us to be someplace new, someplace closer to the action, someplace with better singers for my lovely, much-stressed choral composer wife. And she's out there in the other room laughing here. And if you had any idea what we go through to keep the current choir going, you would be absolutely amazed with that. And she's still out there laughing. So anyway, we're coming up here on the end of the program. And again, thank you very much for listening to our little presentation about the need for ongoing, continuing contributions to RBN. The only way we're going to get the big money influence out of our society is for all the little money to band together in support of getting the truth out there. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller's program. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, share what you learn here with everybody that you can. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.